Hello, everyone. Today I'll be reading something I wrote in school when I was bored, and I want some feedback on it. So, this is the first thing I've ever written, ever, and it's called The Disappearance of the USS Welsh. I'm not the best narrator, so bear with me, and let's get into it. I'll start reading now. The Disappearance of the USS Welsh. It's in a letter format, so. Letter to Professor Martin of the Mississippi Tributary University. From Lieutenant Lennon Aberdeen, 7th of October 1915. Hello, Professor Martin. I understand that your profession is in the unknown. In the unknown is profound, and you are internationally well known. If this is true, I beg of you to take my word and investigate. At Section 7J of the Mid-South Atlantic, around 81 miles off the coast of Brazil, the Brazilian Navy reported a large object floating on the water. They estimated it to be around half a football field long and did not specify how wide it was. Mysteriously, the cruiser boat they had sent to investigate did not report back. The Brazilians felt an ocean quake and promptly left. This envelope shall have a translated report of the incident. No matter anyways, as the Brazilians deemed the object to be a U-boat. Now, it is important to note the consistency of our fleet. Our cargo transport consisted of two freightliners, the UCV Havana and the UCV Nassau, two cruisers, the USS Welsh and the USS Plano, and a destroyer called the USS Thunder. Due to our small flotilla, our commanding officer requested that the USS Welsh deviate slightly from the route to intercept the object. It took about 3 hours for the Welsh to report back to us. They reported that the object was cruising at around 10 knots an hour, and its trajectory would have it sailing south towards the Antarctic continent. The object did not fire back, nor did anything special happen. However, it was identified as a German U-boat. The cruiser had fired warning shots, yet the U-boat did not respond. The Welsh waited an hour, and then proceeded to fire cannons at the back of the U-boat to destroy it. Eventually, a shot made through the propeller, and the German boat halted. However, the boat made no activity. Then, after about 10 minutes, it sunk into the ocean. The Welsh began its course to reconnect with the convoy. When the stern was facing where the U-boat once was, a hole appeared below the engine. First, it was only a few centimeters small, but it slowly grew to a few inches, then a foot wide. The engine room was filling with water. The Welsh still managed to make it back to the convoy, and the captain allowed for the cruiser to make a route for Rio de Janeiro before it fully sunk. We took some of the ammunition supply and assisted in pumping out water before they changed course. At 0150 at night, or 1:50 at night, we heard a rumbling noise. There is no foul weather predicted for this region of the ocean, so I went out of my bunk to inspect the noise, and the ocean was shaking. The waves reached meters high, and the boat began to rock wildly. I spotted a crewmate and ordered him to fire a flare above the ocean to raise the visibility. After being ordered to do so, the man shot a red flare, contacting the clouds, which were suspiciously low and faded. I then told the man to come to the bridge with me, and upon reaching the bridge, it was a treacherous journey. The waves rose higher and higher, and each step felt like walking on a rope bridge in high winds. I come from Maine, and have experienced many storms at sea. None were ever as terrible as this. Upon reaching the bridge, we checked our speed. There must have been a strong current dragging us, as we were going 20 knots above our maximum. I radioed the only other cruiser, the Plano, and the plane reported that the entire crew was awakened by the storm, and the reported speed was 40 knots. From the bridge, I saw the radio operator on the deck. He was waving towards us and was making his way up, but the poor soul should not have been so careless. A large wave converged over us and threw him off the boat. The man next to me had a look of horror on his face, and I told him to sit down and hold himself. The captain radioed us from his room, saying that the weather was causing both freightliners to bring on too much water. He informed us that the fleet will be heading towards a port in southern Brazil to wait out the storm. I contacted the Welsh to report the weather in Rio de Janeiro, but they did not respond. One of the crewmates in the bunk, who was from Argentina, had once told me of a creature with many similarities to whatever was happening. I diverged from the path we were taking, but the current kept dragging us in one direction. It took much frustration to eventually take the boat out of the current. The waves screamed at us and yelled its insults. For every mile that we moved, though, the waves would lower by a meter. Eventually, the convoy was out of whatever foul force had started that monsoon. I went back down to check the damage, and I found that, other than a missing toolkit that remained untethered, the boat was almost untouched. I went back into the hole, and left the man with me to rest. I checked in with the captain and reported what was missing. Captain Winston was not happy, though. He bluffed the unusual weather as a hurricane passing through, and doubted that we really needed to go off course. A freightliner, though, had lost its communication with the convoy, and was left isolated with no protection. Winston complained how he would be discharged from the Navy and could only hope that the freightliner would make it to Argentina, if it was told to. At the port of Alegre, I decided to ask the locals if there was any severe weather lately. Everyone I asked said no. However, when I detailed the occurrence to an old man, he told us a story. Long ago, when the man was in his early adulthood, he worked for a fishing company. One day, he saw an empty canoe about 20 miles from the coast. His captain thought of looking into the canoe to see if there's any leftover fishing supply. Once their small fishing boat came parallel to the empty canoe, a strong wind began blowing. The waves got choppier, and the canoe sank with the waves. A cloudless day had suddenly become an extreme monsoon. The captain of the fishing boat immediately ordered the vessel to return to port. The old man, who was working on the deck, was told by the captain that a large hole had been created below the engine. Water flowed into the engine compartment, and by the time the boat had sunk, the captain and the old man were the only ones remaining. Two of them remained in place until a passing-by fishing boat rescued them. He and his captain tried to warn everyone of great danger at sea, but to no avail. Their story was mocked and believed to be a lie. I asked where the captain of the fishing boat was, and the old man said that the captain had passed away many years ago from old age. I thanked the man for his time and headed back to the destroyer. I found it odd how the man referred to the monsoon and the whole event, as if whatever caused it was a living creature, though. Anyhow, I met with the captain, and as we ready to leave Port Alegre, I told the captain about the old man's story. Obviously, the captain was skeptical, believing it to be some folk tale. Our convoy was back on the original route. We needed to head about 700 southwest before we reached our end. We kept a steady pacing of 20 knots southwest. There's nothing unusual to report. We spotted a figure in the distance, and we received a telegram. USS Welsh. Hello, USS Thunder. Back from Brazil. Rejoining convoy. We sent back. USS Thunder. Welcome back, Welsh. It was a welcome sight to see the Welsh was back in its hole. Though through the binoculars, the Welsh was considerably further than anticipated for the radio to reach us. But about 30 minutes later, the Welsh recontacted us. The captain and the Welsh talked back to each other. Eventually, everyone on our ship was telling the captain to ask the Welsh about what happened 2 days ago. The Welsh responded that there was indeed a light rain and a small current heading south at about 2 knots. The Welsh was about 15 miles from the Brazilian coast during the monsoon. Around 1540, which is 3:40 p.m., the USS Plano, which was about a quarter of a mile ahead, reported the spotting of the missing freightliner, the UCV Nassau. The captain sighed loudly, as if a great relief was brought upon him, which indeed there was. The UCV Nassau was really the only thing on his mind. We contacted the Freightliner's bridge, but there was no response. I was immediately suspicious. The Freightliner was not moving, and the captain decided to investigate. He sent me and a group of 3 others to board the Freightliner. This group consisted of an engineer, soldier, and a radio operator, and me. The Thunder and the Plano would continue with the UCB Havana, while the Welsh would remain with us. As we boarded, the boat was unusually creaky. I was already used to tuning out the ambience of the ocean and whatever ship I was ever on. This, however, was loud and unusually hollow sounding. The ship had aged considerably in the last 2 days, and I would say it had aged for about 2 years, but that simply could not be right. The ship's fence was rusted and had completely corroded in most parts, but nevertheless, I led the group towards a door. The door's handle did not budge, so I requested the soldier's handgun, and I aimed at the door, and with a bang, the door handle fell off. It swung open, and we turned on our lamps. It was a short hallway with 2 doors on both sides. At the end of the hallway was a stairway down. Each door opened to a damp bunk room, within one of which we found a journal. The engineer read aloud the most recent log. This is Finn's Journal, 9th of December, 1915. It has been a considerable amount of time since we lost contact with the convoy. Admiral Seth told us that the ship had finally exhausted all food sources. We had used all the cargo to sustain us and extend our chances of being found. We had run out of fuel a few days ago already, and chances of surviving are slim to none. I have spotted no boats in this previous month, aside from the fishermen. They gave me a fish. We're at least capable of catching water, and there's currently a large storm outside, probably a monsoon or a hurricane, and hopefully the rain will last a while. I recall that when we read that journal, it was the 10th of October 1915. Either they were not aware of the date or something sinister is at play. We stood around in confusion, and the journal made no sense to us. It explained why the boat was in a lack of power, and why the cargo was gone. However, it did not explain why the ship was in such disrepair. I would prefer not to think about it too hard, though. The soldier turned around quickly. It scared us, but nothing was behind us. He said that he heard a noise near the brig. He was the only person to have noticed anything, though, and he seemed insistent to investigate. Before we could make a vote on it, though, he walked out the room and down the stairs. The rest of us were hesitant to go down. The light did not reach to the bottom, and he went down anyways. The light no longer reached him, and his footsteps were now void. I did not want to go down, and neither did the others. That was the last we heard of that man. After searching the rest of the bunks, we found nothing of interest, and we stepped out of the boat. We were still uneasy from the disappearance of the man, but after the last man left the interior, we were met with nothing. It was pitch dark outside, so I checked my watch. It was midnight, and the Welsh was nowhere in sight. Suddenly, though, a blinding light switched on, and the Welsh was right next to us. We jumped, but then realized it was just a cruel joke from the crew. They laughed as we stepped back into the Welsh. However, as we left, the UCV Nassau disappeared. It was right behind us, but it disappeared. I don't know how. This concerned me, and I remembered the first part of the old man's story. I brought it up with the captain, but he did seem very concerned at first, but it was too late to do anything. As the wind blew, the crewmates chattered their teeth, and the wind turned to a sour freezing temperature. Hail began to bombard the ship. The crew headed inside the deck, and it was odd. We were near the equator during the summer. It was unusual for it to hail. The waves were now as high as the deck, and the deck started to ice over, and the hail grew to the size of tennis balls. Our attention was turned to the brewing storm, and all the while I tried to focus outside of the left end of the bridge window. There's something there, and whatever it was large, and it rammed into us with the might of tsunami. We were all thrown across the bridge, and realizing the danger, I called for the Admiral to send out an SOS and to leave the ship. The crewmates were lined up at the raft, lines of arms to the sky, trying to escape. Eventually, I managed to board a raft. We dropped down and rowed away. From the raft, I saw the interior lights of the Welsh. The Welsh had multiple large holes in the hull, and whatever large thing that had rammed the Welsh was bringing it down with it. The power cut off from the Welsh, and the Welsh went dark. From where the ocean and the dark sky meets, I could see the silhouette of the Welsh angled halfway into the water. I guess I blacked out, though. It was morning when I blinked, and my body was bruised up from the hail. I looked around. There was 7 others on the wooden raft. Gloomy. An overcast sky. Rigid ocean. Could only hope for rescue. After several days in the water, a rescue boat was dispatched, apparently. Or I was told. Turns out our small raft was the closest to when the Welsh was last seen. We were the only ones they found, for when we arrived at Buenos Aires, we did not find the rest of the crew. Captain Winston told us that when the convoy arrived, they had been waiting for the USS Welsh to appear. Once the day had passed, they dispatched a rescue boat. This near-death scenario has brought me to write to you, Professor Martin. I urge you to investigate this hidden force, and I do not believe it was a natural monsoon, or hurricane, or rain, and the waves that night were far from natural. I believe the thing that rammed the Welsh was the freightliner we had previously boarded. Once again, I urge you to investigate. I hope this letter finds you well, and I hope to see your letter back. Lennon Aberdeen. That marks the end of the story, and I hope you enjoyed it. I want some feedback and suggestions, and this is a series, so there will be more. If you want to read it, there will be a link in the description to where to read it at. And now begins the part where I explain some stuff. So, this takes place in an old history type 1910, basically. Hold on, let me bring up my notes for this, because I know I wrote somewhere. Yes. Where is it? Yeah, okay. Basically, takes place in 1915, where the war, as we know, World War I, looks very different. Basically, Luxembourg has taken over France, and Luxembourg is allied with the UK, and the USA is essentially a united North America. Most of the war is taking place in South America, with Colombia, Ecuador, Peru being on the opposing side against Brazil, the USA, Luxembourg, and the UK. Germany also being on the side of the Colombians, who lead the group. Um, definitely need to differ because I need to make that old history thing better. It's definitely need to be rewritten. Hold on, I actually have a story for this one too. Short and Vague History of the War by Edward Aberdeen, head of the Mississippi Tributary University, which is fictional if you didn't know. Written 1921. The Great British-German War began in 1891, caused by global instability and begun by the invasion of Luxembourg from the Germans. The Empire of Luxembourg was allied with the British and the Italian Republic. The Germans allied with the Swedish and the Czechoslo-Hungarian Empire. The Germans promptly attempted a strong push against Luxembourgish forces. The following trench warfare caused a long stalemate between the two sides, though. Germany, however, sent an invitation to Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, hoping to persuade them with land by invading British Brazil and Luxembourgish North Argentina. By 1900, the Germans had managed to break through the trenches and reach Luxembourg City, which left them weakened and vulnerable. Aided by the British, though, USA would join the war. Luxembourg would continue their fight in arms with the British forces in Argentina, and the Italians would be challenged by the Czechoslo-Hungarian Empire. Their northern mountains, though, assisted in pushing back them. Italians would make no progress past the invasion, and the invaders would make no progress in Italy. The Unified States of the Americas declared war on Ecuador after a rogue cruiser mistakenly rammed a destroyer. And this story takes place in 1915. I am deeply sorry if that explanation is terrible. As I said, I'm not experienced, and I don't know what I'm doing. So, yeah. Anyways, you might want to know what UCV stands for. It stands for, what was it? Originally, it was supposed to be RLV, ROV for Royal Luxembourgish Vessel. Change it to UCV, and I forget what that was. So, hold on. No, I forgot what that was. I'm writing more for it, but I'm not going to release that for a while. That's all, to be honest. So, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. I understand that I made a lot of mistakes in reading this. So yeah, bye. Subscribe, like, whatever. And if you like Hearts of Iron 4, subscribe to my main channel. Bye.